Hello, YouTube. This is going to be a video um, that maybe some of you will watch, and it's going to be about me, in many ways, being ahead of the curve. But one of the things about being ahead of the curve is that you take a greater risk of being ran over, and I am ahead of the curve, and have been much really for years. And I can give you one example after the other, but it doesn't matter because none of you will listen to me. I'm sure I'll be mocked and laughed at, and then give it about a decade. Someone with a little bit of money will come along and present the same ideal, but with the fucking actual platform and resources. Um, and then you'll listen to them. And I think his name is Brendan. I can't say his name, and that's how smart I am. I've been doing this about 6 months following this dude. But anyways, he made the movie American Circumcision that was against genital mutilation openly, and I give him credit for that. But ultimately, I've been talking about that for 2 decades plus, and no one listens to me or gives me any credit, of course. And that's just one example, and I don't want to make this video all about him. But he blocked me today because I had a disagreement with him about a number of issues. One of those issues being some kind of weird argument about narrative that I'm still trying to make out and I don't care about. Basically, I spent a portion of my day arguing with someone over the definition of the word narrative, and ultimately there was no point to the conversation. I mean, there was no point to this whatsoever that I am still trying to contrive to sum up. Um, Another portion of the conversation that he ultimately became upset by, and I'm not sure why, is he was dissing and knocking hallucinogenic and psychedelic drugs. I want to say, first and foremost, and anyone that knows anything about my content that has followed me at all or my work over the years, even a little bit, um, should know, and you do know, that I am very pro transgender. I have been there every step of the fucking way. I defended them on bathroom rights. I've defended them on playing in female sports. I've defended them on bikini contests. I've defended the drag kids. I'm pro gay. I'm pro gay marriage. I couldn't be any more pro LGBTQ than what the fuck I am if I tried. I am completely 100% pro LGBTQ. And I think my definition of this might have offended him because maybe he took what I meant to be transphobic. And I assume this because if not, I don't know what the fuck his problem is. But I will say this before I say that. Someone else got back to me on the fact that he is part of the artistic spectrum. He is on the autism spectrum, and so am I, by the way. I am Asperger's too, by the way. But anyways, he's actually upset a lot of intactivists because he's blocked them, and I guess that's what I am. Part of what upsets me by this, though I'm not as upset now that I know that he's blocked a lot of other people, so it's not just me, and he has probably the same thing I have, or some form of autism, is that I kind of think that he's someone that came along, might have barely cared about a subject, made a documentary, and largely cashed in on something that people like me have been putting in all the grunt work for decades. But I want to say this about this: he made the psychedelic drugs, are not without harm, and they need to be informed. People need to be informed. And again, this has nothing to do with the original concept that he gained most of his fame for, but nevertheless, now they're doing his coronavirus mask and all the other nonsense. But the point being, I put out the post or the tweet basically replying to him that I am not particularly personally for sexual reassignment surgery. Not to say that I have any right to tell anyone else what to do. I just think that it can be very harmful. But again, the point is, it's your chores, and ultimately, all I can do is inform you or give you the information. So he must have took that to be anti-trans, but ultimately, and to kind of go down the same line or same vein of thought as Bill Hicks did once. What you're really talking about here, and what you're talking about is, do psychedelic drugs help people? And I wonder if I didn't inspire him to post this because he had been following a thread about narratives that I was debating someone else in. I'm somehow still debating them in because I guess on Twitter, for some reason, when someone blocks you, it doesn't get rid of the entire conversation. And I'm not sure how this works. But the point is, he put out basically that about psychedelic drugs. So what I put out instead was, again, it's the same line of thought as Bill Hicks. You cannot say psychedelic drugs does not have positive benefits for people. Why do you ask? Because again, if you look at someone like the Beatles, at first they were essentially basically an early version of a boy band, and they were singing songs like "I Want to Hold Your Hand." Fast forward a few years, they're dressed like a bunch of hippies, and they're singing about living in a motherfucking submarine. Um, the point is, drugs had a positive effect on them, and it did change their psyche and way of thinking. Now, I'm not saying that everyone should go out and take drugs, but I'm saying to say that psychedelic drugs, as Joe Rogan has said, by the way, so if you have a problem with this, maybe you want to take it up with Joe Rogan because he said ultimately much of the same thing I said, or I have said, and what Aleister Crowley was saying years ago. And you should look up a guy named Timothy Leary and a lot of other things in the 60s, and acid trips and LSD and I can't think of it, but I know that there was like various different parties that the Grateful Dead would play at that were essentially acid parties. But the point is, basically what I'm saying is psychedelic drugs can have a positive effect. DMT expand your consciousness, and a lot of it helps clear out and clean out a lot of bad baggage in your brain. There's a lot going on in people's brains that they don't know about, and it can be mentally and physically and spiritual healthy. And I want to take that back to the sexual reassignment surgery part. That's my only concern with that, is that once you do that, there's no going back, just so you know. So that's my issue with that. But again, if somebody wants to do that, that's ultimately their choice. And I'm not saying that someone shouldn't be able to. I never said that. And I'm 100% in support of any transgender woman that wants to have their gender reassigned surgically. But I just don't advise you to. I think you can get by with taking the Exergen. I think you can take Exergen and dress like a woman and get by just fine. And I don't think there's any reason to actually go that far. But again, if you want to, that's 100% okay. And I don't think that's what it was anyways, because he's blocked a lot of people, and I've had issues with the guy before because he said something I thought was kind of smart ass to me one time when there was no reason to. And I just kind of have the sense that he's very smug about a lot of shit, but also knowing he's on the autism spectrum, I think it had to do with he just didn't like me objecting to him. But also, here's my disrespect for people that you block people or you run from people when they ask you a question. If you can't answer a person's question, then what that tells me is you probably don't have the answers to answer the fucking question. Because as much as I get trolled, I've been trolled by many people all over the internet and told all kinds of things, I never fucking block them. Unless you're like 5 different people on like 5 different accounts or some shit, and you're like just trolling the shit out of me and you're, you know, rampaging through my shit, and I've had that happen. In that event, I might block you, but I mean, as far as someone, you can say whatever you want, and I might not even get back to you. And I'm gonna stop doing that, by the way. I'm gonna post my thoughts, and you can say what you want. But because there's no point in having conversations, debates with a lot of these fucking people. Maybe if I get to know someone somehow through a conversation, I might talk to them. But other than that, you can just post whatever you want, say whatever you want. I'm not even gonna argue with you anymore because there's no reason. I'll post my ideal. You say what you want to me about it. But I don't block people. Why? Because I believe strongly enough in what I'm saying. I don't think I need to, and I don't do that. And but I'm going to start to not block people. I'm not stop to not answer. But it's very upsetting to me because I have to take a lot of harassment, and I have over the years on social media for my ideals. And then this is the thing: many of my damn ideals I have had for over a decade. I was talking about circumcision as soon as I got on the internet. I remember once writing something that was quite offensive to a woman because she said something about, why don't you cut the entire thing off, talking about her baby that she was going to have. And that just ran all over me like shit on flies on shit. And I just wrote this really angry, hateful message to this woman. That's the first thing I ever did on the fucking internet. First thing I ever did. So this goes back to 2007. I was talking about this. And then I was arguing with people in school, and I'm looking at it and getting in a fight talking about I'm against this shit. So then I talk about that, and I put in all the fucking grunt work, and I spend years on the internet and on Facebook and on Twitter and on YouTube and everything else, and I've been censored, insulted, threatened, labeled shit, everything in the book, and then someone else comes along, and because they have a little bit more money, they get my fucking fame, my fucking hard work. And it really goes back to, reminds me a lot of what Charles Manson said, and that is, I'm upset with hard copy. I'm upset with you get to play act me, and then I'm down here in the fucking ground, and I actually did the shit. It's like I built a fucking foundation for something, and then it's like, yeah, this is my fucking foundation. I build a cornerstone, you take all the credit. And I don't give a shit because I'm just glad the guy did what he did, and I'm not saying he's ever seen a single thing I've ever said up until I started following him, probably like half a year ago. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is this: It's really annoying for me to come up with ideals and have original thought, be an original thinker and have original thinking and trying to put my ideals out there and be nothing but insulted and attacked by people constantly in many cases until that shit. And then someone else comes along because they have more money and more resources. They put up a fucking documentary, and then people see that documentary because it's better presented because he can find statistics. And I try to do as good of a job as I can, but he finds better statistics, has interviews with other fucking people believing this that are a little bit more popular than I am, that were around probably before me, true. And he's got the footage and he's got the scenes and he can direct and produce this thing that I can't produce because I'm incompetent because I have Asperger's. So because of that, I can't do this, and I don't have crowdfunding, and nobody would give me $1. I can't even get you to join a Facebook group. And because of that, because for whatever reason, my antisocial Asperger-ridden ass can't get you to follow me, because of that, everything goes over to them. And it's not just that. And I have had ideals for fucking years. And there are so many things I predicted going back. Like, I predicted the Democratic Party to the last 4 to 5 elections, you were going to go into decline and lose the last 45 elections. And I barely got the last one wrong because you somehow inked out a winning for the House, in part because of bad publicity from that one idiot judge for whatever from Alabama a few years ago. That's the only reason you won that, really. Okay. But I barely lost that. You still don't have Congress, and you still don't have the fucking White House, and you're trying to get it back, or you don't have the Senate, whatever. It doesn't matter. The point is, you have the House, you don't have the other branch, and you don't have the fucking White House. And I predicted that going back to 2012, man. And I'm predicting now, it's like I predicted before you chose this guy, you could be under a fucking sexual harassment allegation by Joe Biden, and you might lose the fucking election. It's going to be a freak show. And then I see he's being represented not only by the same fucking lawyer that took down Weinstein, he's represented by the same fucking lawyer that represented Trump, the guy he's running against. So I'm saying this is going to be a freak show. And by the way, something suspicious is going on there, but that doesn't even matter. This is going to be a freak show. The Democrats are going to lose. And then 1 year to the day, I swear to God, after he fucking loses, people will say what the fuck I'm saying. And then you'll say, well, no one ever said it. The Arab Spring, going back to when Gaddafi died, I said I believe there was interference of terrorist groups in this fucking movement. Even before that, even back to Egypt. And I don't have much content up about that because it's many fucking years ago. But literally, a few years later, they go into Syria and they start fucking finding evidence that ISIL was part of Syria. Or Syrian Revolution, the Syrian Revolution. So that the rebels actually, there were a lot of them were terrorists and there were a gray area, and we found out the United States government was funding it. And I could go into how I knew that, but one way I knew that was because Gaddafi said terrorists was drugging and his people and whatever. And the thing about that is he always says the United States and Israel. He never says terrorists. So for him to say terrorists, that tells me that he might have been telling the truth. And I don't know if he was or not, but if I was wrong, I wasn't wrong for long because they did end up doing it, just like I predicted. I'm right about the point that I'm making is whatever the fuck it is, I'm right about these things. And I am literally years ahead of my fucking self in advance, and I'm ahead of the curve. And like anyone too far ahead of the curve, I'm walking on foot actually, and a car slams into me. That's what's happening every damn single time I put out an ideal, so that someone else can come along, maybe a decade later, still my fucking ideal, run with it, and I'm shit. But you want to know the truth? You want to know the truth more than any of that? And again, humanism, by the way, will be, if your fucking society even survives, and forget the Democratic Party, you're probably toast. But if the fucking society survives, humanism and androgyny or gender deconstructionism will be the future. Not traditionalism and not feminism either. Humanism. But that's not even the point. You want to know the real problem with what the fucking real problem with this fucking country and this fucking society is? It is you have produced an incompetent culture ran by incompetent fucking people with an incompetent voting electorate to spend most of their time watching football games and then at the last moment go and decide to vote for whoever they think is a little bit fucking more like them with a little bit of fucking information they're provided by the fucking media that lies half the fucking time and they don't watch much of anyways. And then they vote and they cast their votes, so they get to vote. And then you end up with a reality TV star like Trump, or you could have ended up with someone even worse like Hillary Clinton that probably would have started a world war. And now you're living in a country where not only, by the way, do you mutilate your children's genitals, your male children's genitals, and not the females, because that makes sense. But you do that, but not only do you do that, but you spent $1 trillion looking for fucking imaginary Russians that don't exist. And I still can't figure out why do you think the Russians did this. Then third of all, you almost had a world war earlier this year, or at the latter part of last year, or earlier part of this year. I'm not really sure what one with Iran after you killed that dude. That could have happened. And then fourth of all, you have a disease pandemic. And do you know why? Because this is what happened. This is This is what happens when you let people who think they know how to run a country, and you let people who think they have ideals, or you let people who don't have ideals think they have ideals. This is what happens. This is the worst country that has been ever ran or managed since possibly, I don't fucking know, maybe the late Bourbon House in France. Since the end of the French Revolution, with King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette spending and running that country into debt and so forth, that helped cause French Revolution. This is the worst a country has been managed or taken care of since then. This is fucking embarrassing. And you don't have to listen to me. You don't have to listen to anything else. I'll post my content. I'll try to get my ideals out there. I'm not worrying with it. I'm not checking to see if it took. If it takes, great. But you fucking people are incompetent and you don't have a fucking leg to stand on. And you are fucking yourself and you're fucking me and you're fucking us. Hey, 666.